Gay women and men comprise a large segment of Canadian society with no human rights. The issue of gay rights is on the line. It's time for all of us to focus on what it means to be gay. More and more gay people are standing up and demanding their rights. What are these rights? Gay people are being subjected to ugly, often violent forms of discrimination. Where are the roots of this discrimination? What changes need to be made in our political and social community? What can each one of us do?
What is gay and what are gay rights?
To my mind, being gay is being able to relate to members of your own sex on a mental, spiritual, sexual, affectional basis in an intense manner. And it's not just, as society tends to define, a sexual thing. We are complete human beings, and I think being gay describes, for some people, a political definition, for many of us a state of mind, for many of us in the open gay community, a lifestyle. And we're, as openly gay people, in the process of articulating what is gay. Gay rights, I think, are human rights in that we want, as gay people, we want the right to our basic humanity, to be able to live with freedom and dignity, and to this date, that has been denied us. I don't think there are special rights that gay people require. We just want the basics, and we'll take it from there. Well, the closet, first of all, is where we as gay people are forced, where we're brought up. As gay people, from day one, from our birth, we're taught that we're sick, dirty, perverted, twisted, whatever. And we're taught to, when we begin to realize that we have feelings for our own sex, we're taught to suppress them, to deny them to ourselves and to others. And that whole life of deceit, that double life, that living of a lie, is the closet. Coming out of that closet is when you, as a gay person, recognize that you can and do care for your own sex, and are willing to begin acknowledging that. And it's a long, slow, often slow, usually painful process. The first step being acknowledging to yourself, and then once there's some strength there, you go on to tell your friends and your family. And it's, for most of us as gay people, that coming out process is an endless one. Every time we meet someone new, we have to reaffirm ourselves again. We have to disclose, and that's a whole strain and a pressure that straight people never have to deal with.
Well, let's talk about homosexuals. Let's talk about lesbians and gay men. I have a few questions I'd like to throw at Anita and her ship of righteous fools. First of all, who is Anita Bryant to make gross accusations against a diverse group of people who she obviously knows nothing about? What right has she or anybody else got to threaten to have us cured, have us imprisoned for 20 years, or, failing that, have us wiped out completely, merely on the basis of our sexual preference? What right do these so-called Christians have, in spite of all evidence and statistics to the contrary, to continuing a vicious and hysterical campaign to save their children from drooling homosexuals and leaping lesbians, just waiting to pounce on the poor innocents and lead them into a life of decadence and sin? How utterly disgusting, what utter crap. How often are children molested by homosexuals? It is a proven fact that most child molesters are heterosexual men, not homosexuals. and all the paranoia and horror being generated against gay teachers, when once again it is the heterosexual male who takes advantage of his female students. Looked at rape statistics lately? Guess who? You're right, another example of normal heterosexual activity. If our children need saving, it's from the heterosexual norms of macho violence. I am sick and tired of being the scapegoat of everyone's religious hysteria, social prejudices, and heterosexual frustrations. I am sick and tired of being labeled sick, disgusted, and perverted, merely because I happen to love women, because I find happiness and contentment in another woman's arms. For this reason, I, like all my gay sisters and brothers, am subject to humiliation, scorn, and abuse. Our mere presence is an excuse for physical and verbal violence and humiliation. We're deprived of jobs, kicked out of apartments, schools, restaurants, and nightclubs. Our children are taken away from us. Our lives are made as miserable, painful, and uncomfortable as people can possibly make them. And when we're when
you realize this, come to Jesus and he'll help you.
Could you please leave this room right now? I don't need your kind of fucking crap. I have a hard time with it. Now leave. I have the right to speak. Leave. 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 Okay, that is an example of the kind of stuff that I have to put up with every day of my life.
All of us have sinned and come short of the glory of God, and that means you, and you, and you.
Thank you.
And you.
Also, you include yourself.
Okay, I think that gives us an idea of the maturity and the intelligence and whatever of the people that are against us. Well, when we're finally able to disregard all the lies and insults, take back our dignity and pride, though it's often very hard, and dare to say, I'm gay, and I'm proud, and I have rights too. I am a person just like the rest of you. Then we're accused of being blatant, of stepping out of our place, or better yet, constituting a militant homosexual fringe on par with the FLQ terrorists, to quote Ken Campbell. It has taken too much pain and agony to be able to say, I'm in love with a woman, and I'm happy, and I'm complete, to crawl back to the darkness and misery of the closet. I'm sorry, Anita. I'm sorry, Renaissance International, but we're here to stay.
turning to Doug Wilson. Doug, could you give a brief history and update on your case?
Well, my case was, it's the University of Saskatchewan. I was denied part of my teaching responsibilities because I was publicly gay, and the university administration declared that I was unfit to go into the public schools to supervise my students in their practice teaching because I was gay. The Human Rights Commission took that case under the definition of sex in the Human Rights Code and called for a formal public inquiry into the case against the university. The university sought and received an injunction against the Human Rights Commission, which effectively stopped the case at that point. The case was fought on a lot of fronts, though, and though we lost a small battle in the court, and that since has been overturned, the whole campaign to include sexual orientation in the Human Rights Code was fought, and we gained a lot of ground in terms of community contacts, in terms of strengthening the gay community, in terms of gaining support throughout the province from labor and other groups.
Was your dismissal an isolated case?
No, that it happens all the time, particularly, well, in every field of employment, particularly in the field of education, where people just through suspicion of being gay or are denied their employment. It's isolated in that it was special, and isolated in that not very many of us make it an issue. I think there's been 4 people in the country to date who have actually made a public stand, and in that sense it's isolated. In coming out, we do take a lot of risks. We risk our careers, we risk our friendships, our families. We have children, we risk losing our children. We risk losing our homes. And also in many cases we run the constant threat of verbal and physical abuse. And that is a constant risk for every gay person, and I think it's important for people to realize that, because in this liberal society that we live in, people say, well, no one is discriminated against. A lot of people are surprised that gay people don't have basic civil liberties. What they don't realize is that, yes, our children are seized from us, yes, we are beaten, we are robbed. In parts of this country, probably every day someone is killed just for being gay. And that is a vicious and ugly repression. Our meeting places are harassed. Our right to peaceful assembly, to our freedom of the press is constantly under attack. And it's difficult, I think, for many people to realize just the extent of that.
The system we live under is shaky indeed. Repressive right-wing forces are being mobilized internationally. Soon, none but the most conforming and obedient citizens will be left in peace. 1984 is only 6 years away. Today, they're concentrating on gay men, lesbians, and feminists. When they've gotten rid of us, who will be next?
In a poll of high school students recently done by the Ladies' Home Journal, Adolf Hitler and homosexual rights opponent Anita Bryant have, and I quote, done the most damage to the world. So, where do we begin in fighting the world's most dangerous woman? Clearly, I am against Bryant's hysterical methods. But really, I don't think her basic tactic, which is to approach people through religion, is all wrong. Because the morals of our society are still largely controlled by organized religious institutions. If we wish to make a significant mark in changing our society's attitudes towards homosexuality, it is essential that religious leaders of all faiths become involved in our struggle. There's no room in our society for freedom without responsibility. To advocate stripping various groups of people of their civil rights because God says so is one of the most cowardly forms of irresponsibility. It might be funny if it were not so dangerous. A few years ago, I can remember that the American comedian Flip Wilson had everyone laughing over his weak-willed character who was always saying, "The devil made me do it." Well, it was funny because we all saw ourselves shirking responsibility and blaming the devil. Bryant and those who support her are saying, "The Lord made me say it." They foist their personal fears and their prejudice onto society in the name of God. A vast number of Christians and Jews and others who take the idea of God seriously are sickened and horrified at such practices, especially since the Bryant persecutions have been so closely identified with religion. We reject her misleading and her disgusting stereotype because hers is no religious campaign. It is nothing more than ignorant hysteria.
Truth shall set us free. Truth shall set us free someday. And it's deep in my heart, I do believe the truth shall set us free someday. For a nation to be truly just, it is essential that its citizens treat one another with tolerance and respect. The Judeo-Christian heritage is very obvious in white European society, but we recognize that ours is not the theocratic state of the ancients. This is a 20th century secular nation where Jews and Muslims, Buddhists and Christians, followers of Amerindian religious traditions, and those of no religious faith at all, are equally entitled to their beliefs. When any one group suggests that the believers of another group are lacking in the essentials necessary for authenticity or eternal salvation, then the groundwork has been laid for religious persecution. All of us, Christians, Jews, Muslims, native peoples, all of us should be discussing our faith in such a way that we should learn to have respect for each other and to discover the God who is really active in the other person, in everyone we meet. We have no monopoly in God. And as Anita Bryant has said that it's God who's speaking to her, we believe that nobody has that kind of monopoly. The Archbishop of Recife, Brazil, that wonderful modern Roman Catholic saint, Dom Helder Camara, has written of the great religions of the world. Instead of simply blaming the past or of shouting insults at one another, let us unite. Not merely a few people from a few religions, but all who believe in God. Let us unite to demand justice and love, the only way to a true, lasting peace. Today we protest the arrogance of those who, in the name of Jesus, restrict authentic religious experience to those who subscribe to their narrow interpretation of what it means to be a Christian. It's that kind of thinking which led to the medieval persecution of the Jews and which led to the horror of Hitler's concentration camps. We resist the myths spread around by Anita Bryant which say that homosexuality can be taught by a teacher in school. She keeps coming back on that one. We acknowledge that when God creates male and female, some males and some females will discover that their natural sexual orientation is towards members of their own sex. That's to be found in nature at large. Anita Bryant didn't know that. This is also to be found in nature. As I say, it would seem therefore quite unnatural and terribly hurtful for anybody to pressure a true homosexual man or woman into attempting a change in their sexual orientation. Anita Bryant plans to do this with her Anita Bryant Ministries. And I think that's going to leave a terrible amount of damage around, and as Dr. Blair, who's made a specialty in this in a clinic in New York, says that he's going to have to pick up a lot of broken pieces if people think that you can actually change homosexuals into heterosexuals. Jesus nowhere mentions homosexuality. He does have a great deal to say about love for God, love of God, love for one another. He does make it clear that he is on the side of those excluded by society. You know, Jesus cited a Samaritan, an acknowledged heretic, as the hero of his best-loved parable. God, in his wisdom, created the majority of men and women to be heterosexual, but he also created a very large number to be exclusively homosexual. And we deplore any who would encourage discrimination against that minority. Dr. Norman Pittenger, a Christian theologian at Oxford University and a guest lecturer at the University of Saskatchewan in 1976, said, "What matters in relationships is their quality, not with whom they happen to be had. The only moral absolute that can really follow from a right understanding of the Christian faith is," says Pittenger, "that love God as love." Where is the love in the message of Renaissance International? How can we love a Jew if we believe he or she is going to go to hell? How can a man truly love his wife if he believes that God has set him in authority over her? How can we love a gay man or a lesbian if we honestly believe that they are depraved and cut off from their Creator? God does not want us to cower before him in fear, but to love him as our Father and our Mother, and to trust him as our friend. We're liberated through God's love. God gives us good news. He binds up our broken hearts. He liberates the bonds which keep us captive, and he sets us free from the human oppression that is evident in our Canadian society today. Thanks be to God, who gives us the courage to be fully human and to rejoice in our fellowship as children of the one family of God.
Good afternoon. In each of the last 4 years, the Saskatchewan Association on Human Rights has approached government requesting that sexual orientation be included in our human rights legislation. We consider it wrong to deny a person a job or a home or to face like discrimination because of that person's sexual preferences.
On behalf of After Stonewall, a gay liberation journal of Winnipeg, I'm glad to see everyone here flaunting it. Now, Bryant and her forces claim they love us, but they hate to see us flaunt it. Now, what is the terrible thing we flaunt that the bigots object to? Why, the truth, of course. By standing up and declaring we're gay, proud, and angry, we smash the stereotypes of the timid, closeted homosexual and the invisible, non-existent lesbian. By flaunting the truth, we attempt to establish a working dialogue of understanding and tolerance with the rest of society. Flaunting it exposes the Bryant entourage for what they really are, a vicious right-wing reactionary force that not only opposes the rights of gay men and lesbians, but seeks to prevent women from gaining full equal rights and declares Jews and Muslims are destined to go to hell. Never have I seen so much hatred brought forth in the name of Christianity.
Remember the Inquisition.
10 years ago, Bryant was describing the Vietnam War as a holy crusade. Today she sees women working, women having equal opportunity in employment, women having control of their bodies as threatening. Yet she has economic freedom to organize against the rights of others, with such income as $100,000 for promoting Florida oranges to a reported $5,000 on many performances. Bryant complains to the press that gays are persecuting her and are responsible for a loss of singing engagements. What a bloody hypocrite! Yet it's all right for her to stormtroop the continent, spreading hatred and intolerance, and calling for lesbians and gays to lose their jobs, their children, their homes. The frightening extent to which her campaign may go was revealed in the Playboy interview when she said, quote, "After our victory in Dade County, we could have wiped the homosexual out. That was a very real possibility. It is easy to succumb to it and use it for your own advantage and to wipe out a lot of things that need wiping out." End of quotes. I would like to know who the hell made Anita Bryant God? Not one of us can be truly free until we're all free.
I'm a member of the Board of Directors of the Saskatchewan Association on Human Rights, and I'm here in support of the rights of homosexuals and gay people. I think that they should have as much rights as everyone else. Human rights is something that should be for everyone. I think there are many cases in society of where people are discriminated against, not only because perhaps they are homosexual, but even because they may be accused of being homosexual. And thus, even people who are not homosexual have a stake in the cause of homosexual rights.
What is the present legislation regarding homosexuality?
Well, there is no present legislation so far as protecting the rights of homosexuals. There is no, it is not against the law to discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation. And that's one of the things that the Saskatchewan Association on Human Rights has been lobbying the provincial government to endorse. And so far they have not acted upon this. I think it's evident from the things that have happened in recent times, such as rallies like this, that the cause of homosexual rights is coming to a point where I think they will be established within a few years. It is very important for us to keep struggling and to support them in every way possible.
What kinds of things can the general public do and people in general do to help speed up the initiation of some legislation?
Well, I think the public generally can put pressure on their elected representatives. They can give support to their gay friends and colleagues in the workplace, in terms of struggles like employment struggles, like child custody cases. They can, if they're supportive of gay issues, they can talk. When people are being put down for being gay, when the sort of typical fag joke routine is happening, that straight people in the general community can speak out against that. Those are really important things, and they seem small, but they're the things that eventually win the battle.
Why do you think that the government has been reluctant to pass this legislation?
Well, society has looked on gay people for a long time as being perverted, as being sick. We're seen as a threat to the family, to children. That those are the myths, and the government, rather than dealing with those issues, and rather than dealing in a responsible manner with the absence of rights for probably the largest minority at this point, 10% of the population, have chosen to do what is politically expedient and ignore that large minority. They're afraid. They're afraid in a political sense at the ballot box, and they're afraid also, I think, as straight identified politicians, to take the personal risks that would be required in taking a principled stand on this issue.
Is legislation enough? Is that going to guarantee any more freedom and safety for gay people?
No, it certainly isn't. It's a means to an end. I think it's probably very necessary that at some point in time it would be helpful if we had the legislation to give us a breathing space, to give us some recourse in the courts, which we don't have. We don't have any legal protection. I think if we look at what has happened with Native rights and women's rights, the legislation is there. It does provide some recourse, but it hasn't eliminated sexism, it hasn't eliminated racism, and what we need is a whole change in attitude, and that is a long-term thing, and that comes from public education, that comes from public action on the part of gay people. It comes from public articulation of who we are. I think a point I'd like to make is that society, to this point in time, has defined gay people, and because so few of us have been out, that definition has been allowed to stand. We've been labeled as perverts and child molesters and whatever. It's only when we are willing to stand up and live honestly and openly that we can show people that all of that is a lie, that we are wonderful and beautiful human beings. And the definition must be our own. And it is only when we choose to define ourselves, when we take that away from our oppressors, that we can begin to be free.
Love shall